All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this casual conversation with Miss Nicole Reid on this beautiful Thursday evening, 7 p.m. Eastern. I am Josh Hernandez, and I am the admin of the Notary Loan Signing Agent Training Facebook group, a free resource for the new notary. Before we begin, I want to go ahead and set down some rules. If you can please stay muted until you are instructed otherwise by myself or Miss Reid. Feel free to use the chat to ask questions. We'll be looking at that periodically. If you happen to be seeing a question in the chat that you are going to answer, I humbly request that you are 100% certain in the answer that you are giving before you actually give it. This group is dedicated towards giving accurate information. And number 3, we will have an open Q&A session toward the end of this conversation or after this conversation is over. And we will also look at a couple of docs, the Patriot Act form, and what other one did we say? The closing disclosure was the other one that we're going to be talking about as well. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and do my best to introduce the awesomeness of Miss Nicole Reid. Miss Nicole Reid is the president and founder of Reid Legal Solutions and has been doing title work since 2019. She studied law at the University of Miami School of Law and currently resides in Daytona Beach area, I believe it was.
Right.
Before she started her own firm, she was an associate attorney at not one, not two, but 3 separate law firms and a former law clerk at Grossman, Roth, Yaffa, and Cohen trial lawyers. Fun fact, she worked at Central Florida News 13 for a good minute, and she is the best Florida lawyer that I've ever met. You see what I did?
Write that down.
You're the only one I've ever met from Florida. Ladies and gentlemen, please say hi to Miss Reid via the chat box. Miss Reid, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us tonight. And will you please share your story with us and tell us how you got to be in the notarial and title world, please?
Sure. So I originally did not go to school for law. I wasn't planning to do law school. I wasn't pre-law. I was a journalism major. I was ready to be the next Barbara Walters until I realized that you have to move all the time and you don't get paid very well. And it just wasn't for me. So I quickly decided to move to Plan B and give law school a shot. Wasn't really sure where it was going to take me, and turned out I loved law school itself. Did not love the day-to-day litigation work. Once I actually got into those big firms and had to, pull the 60 to 80-hour weeks and fight with people all day, every day, I was like, I don't know that this is how I want to spend the rest of my career. So in 2019, I decided to open my own firm so that I could kind of do what I like to call happy law. So I do a lot of title work. People are buying and selling homes. They're happy. There's always, hurdles to overcome. There's still, things you have to deal with, but for the most part, it's not such a adversarial kind of practice. So I do a lot of title work. I do some trademarks. I do other things here and there, but the title work is really sort of my respite from the standard, law, litigation, fighting with people every day kind of work. So when I decided I wanted to become a title attorney, while I don't have to take the title exam, you still have to go through the title course, and you still have to, get your certification, and you've got to get your notarial certification. So that was the first step. Got all of that done, and now I do predominantly title work, and I use remote notaries and mobile notaries all the time. Which has really helped me expand my business because I'm not tied to just doing closings for people where I physically am. Now I can kind of do them all over the state. So definitely hiring mobile notaries is a big part of what makes my practice work.
Amen. It's kind of the whole world is now your oyster, right?
Exactly. At least in Florida.
Yeah. No more limitations though. As I mentioned earlier, our group is predominantly newer notaries or individuals who are looking to become a notary, right? With a sprinkle of some seasoned notaries in there as well. So title is always something that it can be confusing for some individuals, for notaries wanting to be signing agents. And just to clarify for the group, I'm sure a lot of them already know, but just in case, the notarial work breaks off into two predominant areas, right? General notary work, where you do the onesies, twosies, for the people who Google, notary near me kind of thing, and then you do some signing agent work. Now, there's other stuff, yes, but this group is normally focused on this, right? The signing agent piece, where you do real estate transactions and those type of loans. So, can you explain a little bit about what does a title office do? What does a title lawyer do? And then secondary, can you talk to us a little bit about what the difference is between a title lawyer and just a title office?
Yeah, of course. So Florida is one of, I think there's not very many states. I want to say Florida is one of a few states that actually do not require attorneys to handle closings. So you can be a title agent and not be an attorney. And in fact, most title agents are not attorneys, but they do need to be notaries so that they can do the signing process. So part of my practice sort of involves, not just doing the closing, but also giving the legal representation to, whoever hires me. In most counties in Florida, it's going to be the seller. So typically, seller hires me. First thing I do is get with my underwriter and order a title search. I can do them myself. Title agents can do them yourselves. They teach you in the title course how to do them. But that's what the underwriter is there for. They're the insurance company. I sort of like them to give me the green light rather than me doing it myself. So I order the title search, do all of the other real estate things on the side, help with the surveys scheduled, see if they need any inspections, things like that. But really the first step is going to be getting that title search ordered, because those take generally 5 to 10 business days to turn around. And, realtors in Florida, they like to close things as quick as they can so they can get that commission. So they like to send you contracts that are like closing date in 2 weeks. Okay. So usually, 3 or 4 weeks is really a lot more realistic because the title search alone is going to take almost 2 weeks. So it's sort of just really managing deadlines and managing guidelines. And I don't want to steer too far away from the question. But essentially, that's the first step, is getting that title search ordered. When the title search comes in, the different underwriters have different formats for their reports, but generally speaking, they're all going to be the same in terms of the necessary and important information. So typically the first page of the title report is just the property info, the buyers and sellers, how much is the sale, is there a loan involved, that sort of thing. The second page is really where my job comes in, or a title agent job comes in, if that's what you're looking to do. And that lists the requirements that you have to satisfy before the insurance company will put title insurance on that property. So really the rest of the closing process is essentially devoted to ensuring all of those requirements are met. Some of them are very basic, like you got to make sure that the buyer pays for title insurance. Okay, obviously that's why we're here. You got to make sure that the seller gives a warranty deed. But sometimes if there's any issues with the title, for instance, there was an issue with a prior deed, it didn't have witnesses or something along those lines, you've got to really work on getting that cleaned up. That's usually kind of the most prevalent title issue is going to be something wrong with a prior deed. It didn't have witnesses. A husband sells the property but doesn't name his wife as a grantor. She has homestead rights to it if it was their homestead property. So there are things here and there that you have to, prepare affidavits or, redo deeds, things like that. But generally speaking, that title search is really sort of the be all end all of what sets the tone for how that closing is going to go. I hope that answers the question. I kind of veered off there maybe, but
it's completely fine. So then I guess in my mind, right, a title office does all that. Does being a title lawyer kind of kill two birds with one stone, right? So if there's any kind of like legal action that needs to happen or advice that needs to be given, you already have that hat that you can wear and just kind of.
That's the perfect way to put it. And that was something I wanted to mention as well. So in Florida, like I said, you don't have to be an attorney to be a title agent. So most title companies have, maybe one attorney on staff, because a lot of the underwriters will not, sign you on as one of their title agents unless there is an attorney that oversees your conduct, your practice, whatever. So most title companies are title agents, but like they might have one title attorney on staff that in theory oversees everything. Obviously, if you have, 25 closings a month and you've only got one title attorney on staff, they're probably not actually overseeing all 25 files. As long as they are making sure the money that's coming in and the money is going out match up and you don't have a surplus on one side, that's really, what it all boils down to. Yeah, exactly what you said, the two birds with one stone thing. So like I was saying, when you do the title search and it gives you those requirements, I actually have a lot of people come to me who are actually working with other title companies, but there's an issue with the search and the title company doesn't have the resources to deal with it. Because again, they may only have one title attorney and they need to get an escrow holdback agreement or an affidavit done, within 2 days in order to close on time. So with me being an attorney and not having 15 title agents under me, I can, easily quickly draft that agreement, draft that affidavit, get it done as part of the closing and just keep it moving. But yeah, I definitely have a lot of clients come to me that are already working with other title companies. Other title companies will actually send their clients to me and say, hey, we're doing this closing, but there's this snafu, how do we deal with it? And I'll just handle just that part. So there's definitely a two birds with one stone, buy one, get one free kind of deal going on.
Nice. Okay, that's good to know. That's good to know. So I want to kind of expand on something you said. You have a lot going on, right? There's time hacks. So one thing that new notaries experience and have questions on as well is how time sensitive are these closings, right? So in the signing agent world, we always preach to everybody, hey, it's time is money. There's time hacks that have to be met, and the notary closing, right, the signing agent closing that package or that signing for that day is very important, that it happens on time, as quickly and as accurately as possible, and then the documents are either scanned back or mailed out right within that time limit to get there the next day or whatever that plan is. And so is it accurate to say that if a signing agent doesn't do that, right? Believe it or not, there are some notaries and signing agents that hold on to documents for a day or two without dropping them off into UPS or FedEx, right? Or fail to scan them back and hold on to the documents. So everybody else, the title company, lenders, everybody's blind, right? Nobody knows what's going on or what's being seen. How detrimental could that be from your end if a notary was doing that for one of your closings?
Very detrimental, but almost career suicide if there's a lender involved. If it's a cash transaction, as a title agent, I can kind of keep the buyers and sellers at bay, keep them happy. They don't really know the ins and outs, so they don't know that, there's really a problem until it becomes a major problem. So, but the lenders, they know. And when they send you the loan packages, their instructions are very clear. Most of them want you to immediately overnight the documents. They want them received in their office the next morning. Sometimes that's not physically possible. I had a closing last week that was scheduled for 4 p.m., but there was, traffic and then an accident and then a flat tire, and the buyer didn't even get to my office until almost 8 p.m.
Wow.
So there was no way I was getting that FedEx out overnight. But at the very least, get it scanned in, because the lender needs to make sure that everything was signed properly so that they can give you what they call disbursement authorization. So for most lenders, you can't disperse those funds. You can't give the seller their proceeds. You can't pay the survey company. You can't pay yourself until the lender gives you the green light. And they will not do that without those documents. Most of them want the physical documents before they'll do that. And now that people are getting much more comfortable with online platforms and just technology in general, thank you, pandemic, they're getting a lot more easy to disperse based on just the scanned in documents. But yeah, if I hire a mobile notary and they do the signing for me and they don't send me the documents back, scanned that night, I will never hire that person again, because now I can't do my job because they're not giving me what I need. It's like asking me to score a basket while they're holding the ball. Like, I can't do that. So that's definitely probably a number one concern, is just getting those documents back in a timely manner.
Excellent. I appreciate that. And so would you, and this might be on a tangent, and I know that it's a topic I wanted to hit later on, but a signing agent, right? A new signing agent, let's say, I would assume that if I were in your shoes, I would be much more accepting of a signing agent or a notary who just flat out says, hey, you know what, I'm new to this. I've done training, right? But I may come to you with some questions, or hey, I'm big on communication. If for whatever reason I can't make the drop on time, or I'm going to be delayed, like, I will communicate that to you. Is that a rarity, or is that something that most notaries that you've experienced do with you?
So I am probably in the minority, and I actually prefer to hire newer signing agents and newer mobile notaries because of that. I would rather them do it the way I like things done than do it their own way. You know what I mean? So I love when it's somebody new who's like, hey, how do I do this? Can you explain what this document means to me? Yes, because then I know you're going to explain it to the client the same way I explained it to you. So I love that. The more questions, the better in my book. Obviously within reason. I don't need you to be like, should I FedEx or send these via UPS? I don't know, man. Figure that out yourself. You're a grown person. If you're asking me to explain a document, or does this signature need to match their driver's license, little questions like that, is this witness okay? Absolutely. I welcome those questions, and I love that, and I appreciate that open, honest dialogue, because now I know that I'm not expecting you to do something one way when you don't know that way. So everyone's taught different ways, and things like that. So I definitely prefer newer agents, and I definitely prefer them to ask as many questions as they want.
Oh, excellent. That actually works out really well. I was telling you earlier, right, that I do the free consultations, and just kind of talk to people and answer questions, right? So one of them earlier this week happened to do with marketing, right? And how do they market, and how do they go out and talk to title companies and all that kind of good stuff. And so I said, look, she's not formally trained, right? But she's about to go through the training and all that kind of good stuff. So she was scared about having to go talk to title and admit that she's new. I told her, I was like, you know what? I don't see what the problem would be. Honesty is always the best policy. And, I would assume that most title companies, I'm glad that you just said that, would prefer almost a new notary, especially if you're not a large, if you're a large, First American Title or something like that.
Exactly.
And you're dealing with, high double-digit numbers month after month after month, then maybe your perspective will be a little bit differently. But if you're a moderately sized company or less, I don't see what the problem would be, because then you get to mold your own little personal, notary along the way. So
that's exactly it. And my firm is much more of a boutique, small firm, hands-on approach. Most of my clients get my cell phone number, which I need to stop because I have a boundaries problem. But I love that very personal, one-on-one sort of familial kind of relationship. And I love when I have new notaries who sort of want my perspective on, how to explain this document. What is the reasoning that they're signing this? Why are they signing this? What are the legal consequences of this document? So that they can have those same conversations when they are the ones in front of my clients having them sign. That they can explain them using the same kind of terms and language and explanations that I use with them. So everything's sort of cohesive. So yeah, there's definitely something to be said for kind of molding somebody to sort of be an extension of my firm, really.
Amen. Amen. So since we're on that topic, what I recommend to notaries, right, when they're trying to, I don't want to say market themselves, but really that's what it is.
Yeah.
So I firmly believe that this industry is a very much it's a people industry, right? It's a relationship industry. So I tell them, hey, you know what? You got to sell your product, but your product is not that you're a notary. Your product is not that you're selling, your knowledge, and I'm an expert at this, and I never miss a signature, and I never miss blah blah blah. It's more of you're selling you're trying to sell the relationship. Like, you're trying to sell the fact that you know what, this is going to be a two-way street, two-way communication. I understand that I represent you, and I'm trying to make sure that we do everything we can that's right for the buyer or seller and the signer, etc. So part of that is I asked them to put a little pin dot on where they live, right, their home office or wherever their office is out of, and draw a circle around it, and start listing all the title companies that are around that circle, and then list another one around the other circle, and so on and so forth until they get to their little pinpoint. And to go out there and just talk to them, right? Introduce themselves, see all that kind of good stuff. So from your perspective, if a new notary or any notary came to your office, right, just to introduce themselves, that they're a notary, they know that they're a notary, they introduce themselves that way. Both of you understand what they probably want, right? They want work.
Of course.
How important is the fact that they're dressed professionally, or dressed, is it safe to assume that however they're dressed is going to be what you would assume that they're going to be wearing to the signing?
100%. And but to me, it's almost more of not how they are presenting themselves, but how they communicate with me. One of my go-to notaries did exactly that. She literally stopped by my office one day. She was walking around downtown Mount Dora where my office is, and she was like, "Oh, there's a title company here, a title law firm. Let me go upstairs and introduce myself." And now I use her all the time because I love that she took the initiative, that she wasn't afraid to literally just knock on the door, or send me an email or give me a phone call and say, "Hey, I'm new in the area. This is what I do. If I can ever be of service to you, let me know." And really, people forget, title attorneys and title agents, we have to do the same thing. I have to do that to the realtors to get them to send me their clients. The clients don't just Google me and find me. Most clients come to me because their realtor says, "Okay, we're putting this house up for sale. This is the listing agreement. Who do you want to use as your title company?" Well, who do you know? So the realtors are the ones that really kind of send the clients my way. So I have to do the same thing. So when someone does it to me, there's absolutely no sort of like, I have to deal with this again, because I know that I have to do the same thing. So I appreciate it when someone shows that initiative. And yes, while looking professional is important, because of course, if I see somebody walk into my office, in cutoffs and a tank top, I'm going to assume that's how they're going to show up to my client's house, to sign the documents, or Starbucks or wherever, but if this person is personable, he'd be like, "Hey, this is my day off. I'm just walking around town, but I saw your firm and wanted to introduce myself." Okay, well then they get it,
Right,
I can
right.
trust them. So it's really more about how that initial communication goes. And, if they have that, I guess emotional intelligence is what we're calling it. If they have that and they can, have a nice conversation with someone they've never met before, then they can do that with my client as well.
That's a great way of looking at it. I'm glad you said that. And so, new question: have you used a remote online notary? And if you have, how'd it go? And if you haven't, do you plan to?
I have not yet, and I'm dying to. Um, I thought I was going to get to, like, a couple weeks ago, because I had a buyer who was in Japan. So I was like, "Sweet, this is perfect time to do a remote online notary situation." But she's in the military. She had a notary on base. They just signed it and it was fine.
Hmm.
I was kind of disappointed because I was looking forward to it. So soon, hopefully.
Excellent, excellent. Okay. I really hope that you do, because that's going to be such a huge game changer, I think, for everybody.
Yeah, I
Um,
think the hard part so far, I've pitched it a couple times, but you're passing the notary's fee on to the clients as part of the closing costs, and most remote online notaries charge almost double what a mobile notary would be. So it's hard to get them to really go for that,
mhm.
um, especially if they know that you can send a notary to their house.
Right?
So it's a hard sell unless there's some difficulty, they're bedbound or in the hospital or something. Then absolutely, but I haven't really had the right opportunity yet.
What's what's the going rate in your area for a closing fee for, let's say, a refinance? What would be
Sure.
a standard fee? I know in this area over here, if you're going through a signing service, then you're looking at about $80, 120. If you go direct with a title company, then we're looking more about along the lines of 175, 250.
Okay.
What is it in your area?
So anytime I hire a mobile notary, it's around the same range. It's a little bit higher here. Usually I end up paying them about 100 to 150 to get a package notarized. Um, I can't really say what most title agents charge. Actually, that's not true. I can. Most of the actual closing costs, though, are going to be a lot higher than that. It's not going to be just a signing fee. It's actually, the cost for doing the title search and doing, the lien search and preparing all of the documents and all of that stuff. Most title companies here charge around 500 per side, so 500 closing charge to the buyer and 500 to the seller. It varies, within about 150 bucks on each end. Um, and people think title attorneys, they're like, "Oh, the attorney is going to be more expensive." No, I charge actually less than most of the title agents in my town because I don't need the volume they need. I don't I don't need 25 closings a month. I'm totally happy with 10. So it works out, well for me that I'm able to competitively price. But anytime you hire a mobile notary, it's 100 bucks is totally within the norm.
Excellent, excellent. So I want to go to the chat real quick and see what questions we have. Let's see. My question is, how necessary or appropriate are gifts for initial or walk-in meetings? I'm assuming on the spot, just kind of popping in for the first time type of meeting, notary to a title office. What would be an appropriate gift or a necessary gift?
Definitely no necessary gift. Just, make sure you have business cards with you, because that's the easiest way for me to refer you to other attorneys and other title agents, because that's something that we're always talking amongst ourselves. Who do you use for mobile notaries or remote online notaries? I need to find someone good that I can trust with this loan package, because those get complicated. So there's always sort of back and forth chit chat between us, attorneys and agents, in terms of who we want to use. So it's a lot easier when I can just, if you have a virtual business card, or even, if I can take a picture of your business card and just shoot that to my contacts, that's the easiest way. But definitely no gift is necessary. If you wanted to, I've seen some people, realtors do this all the time, will drop off their business card with like a little like Starbucks gift card attached, just a couple bucks, not anything major, just like, have a cup of coffee on me kind of deal. That's cute, but it's definitely not necessary. It's really not.
So if somebody were to do that for you, what would be your coffee? What would be your coffee order at Starbucks?
So I'm not a big coffee drinker. I used to be. And so the 2021 was my year of let's not be so addicted to caffeine. So I intentionally cut out coffee, but I drink so much black tea now. And if you haven't had Starbucks black tea, get it, but you want it with 2 pumps of classic instead of the cane syrup, and no water, and it is perfection. You can thank me later. It's life changing.
I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna try it.
Good.
And I got COVID back in October, and so I still can't taste or smell. So now I just drink coffee black, and it doesn't matter how cheap or expensive it is because it all tastes the same, like nothing.
I mean, that's kind of a win, but that's miserable.
It's miserable. It's horrible. I just wanted to throw it out there so that way you knew how good you have it right now. Okay.
I may have a cup of coffee just for you.
Thank you. I appreciate you. And if anybody's in her area right now, you know what kind of coffee she would like. All right. So feel free to drop that off at her office if you want to. Let's see. Oh, look, Miss Yesenia says that I have mine. She's referring to the remote online notary piece, I'm assuming, and can't wait to use it. It's so cool that it can be online now. 1,000%. And Miss Yesenia is from Florida as well. I don't know what part, but I know she's in Florida as well. There's a few people in Florida on here right now, so that's neat.
That's really cool.
Orlando.
Oh, Yesenia's in Orlando.
Yeah.
So I'm in Daytona. My office is in Mount Dora, but I do all of Central Florida. So Yesenia, if you will put your contact information in the chat, or if you want to email me, because like I said, I really want to do a remote online notarization soon, and maybe you can be my go-to.
There we go. And we have my boy Mike in Tallahassee.
Awesome.
Michael Martin right there. Yeah, he's a real stand-up guy. I don't know how he is as a notary, but no, I'm just kidding. He's good. Kissimmee. Yeah, that's out of my league because I'm not from Florida, so I'm just gonna assume that you know what they're talking about.
In my general area.
Oh wow, look at that. How convenient.
I know.
You just have a plethora of new notaries and semi-seasoned notaries to just choose from. So
I know. I feel like we need to put together like a coffee date or something.
That's awesome. Miss
Which I'm always open to. So if any of you want to, Google me and email me, whatever, reach out to me. I am happy to meet any of you for coffee, lunch, happy hour, whatever. You can pick my brain. I'm always here to help.
Oh, that's so nice of you. That's so nice of you. Miss Shamika, I'm assuming. Smith is also a Ron. God bless her.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. All right. So I'm gonna refer to my list of questions to see what else I can pop up for you. All right. What we haven't already talked about. You know what? I do have a question. All right. That we haven't covered yet, but I would like to cover before I forget it. I want our notaries to understand that preparation is really key to any kind of success, right? So you've done closings, right? You've been a signing agent. You've done things like that. Everybody has their madness and method when it comes to prepping the documents, what documents they pull forward, what documents they don't, or whatever the case may be. When prepping documents, do you have a routine? Do you have certain things that you did, still do, or don't do anymore, kind of thing?
Oh, absolutely. I have severe ADHD and I probably am not medicated like I should be for it. So if it is not on paper or in front of me, it is gone. So the first thing I do, I wish I had it behind me, but it's in my home office. I have a gigantic whiteboard that I track all of my signings on, by date, but also to make sure all of those little pieces that need to be done along the way are done. For instance, did they get a survey done? Did the title search come in? Did the lien search come in? Is there a prior mortgage that I need to make sure is paid off? Do I have that information? And once all of the boxes are checked and everything's green, that's when I know, okay, now I'm ready to close this thing and sign. So then I prepare the actual documents. And there's sort of, in my mind, two sets of documents. So there are the documents that I prepare, the deed, the bill of sale, if there's any affidavits, stuff like that, the closing disclosure. Then there are the documents the lender prepares. Lenders are notorious for not sending you their loan package until 2 hours before closing.
Yes.
If I get them the day before, it's a freaking miracle and I'm the happiest person in the world. And what I do as soon as I get those closing documents or the loan package from the lender, because they can be kind of complicated and they like to hide signature lines in places so that you can easily miss them, I take the entire loan package and I flip through every single page. And I have them right here. I stick these things on it. A little sign here stickies. I reuse them, which is why this is a total mess. But I put little sign here stickies next to every single signature so that I know as I'm flipping through, I don't have to take, 20 seconds to skim each and every page. I can just flip to where they need to sign, explain what they're signing, and move on with my life. I like to use the red ones if it also needs to be notarized so that I have that visual reminder of you need to do something, Nicole. Don't just have them sign this and move on like you're not done here. So I just use those. And then, once they're done signing, I peel those off. I stick them back on the thing, reuse them for the next time, and then you scan everything in. I definitely sort of take the time to go through that, usually the night before, as long as the lender's giving me the documents in time, so that I can make sure that I'm not missing anything and I understand what each document is so that I can tell them why they're signing it. And I think that's really what, at least from client feedback, that's really what sort of sets me apart from a lot of title companies, is that they just say, sign here, sign here, sign here. And they don't take the time to explain to them, this is what you're signing. This is what this means. This is what can happen if you're signing this and it's not true, So I found that clients really like that and they come back to me because they trust me now that I've explained things to them. So that's why it's so important to really go through that loan package ahead of time so that you understand why, what they're signing and why. So then answer, your sort of the more direct question of how do I keep them organized? So then I have the documents that I've prepared, bill of sale, the deed, any affidavits. There's a few like closing affidavits, addendums. I always have them put in writing their disbursement instructions. Do they want me to send them a check? Do they want me to wire them the funds? So that I have that in writing so they can't, bitch at me for that later. So I sort of keep my documents separate from the loan package because the loan package needs to get scanned in and sent back to the lender right away. So I sort of just keep two stacks separate. And usually my stack is only, 5 or 6 pages long, whereas the loan package is usually 100, 150. So that's how I stay organized. And then, when the client comes, here's my documents, tear through them. Now let's get to the loan package. We only need to worry about the pages with the stickies. Let's get it signed and out of here. And it definitely speeds up my closing since I started doing that for sure.
Nice. Do you ever veer from that system or is it total chaos if you do?
I veered from that system one time because I ran out of stickies and it was a nightmare. I think my normal 30-minute signing time for a loan package ended up being closer to an hour because I had to search each page, because some of these loan documents, the signature line, isn't necessarily at the bottom. Sometimes it's in the middle of the page. There's an IRS form that is always in the lender's loan package, which is also silly. A lot of these things are duplicative. They sign these things when they apply for the loan. But lenders want the wet ink signature, fine. So they've already gotten the tax returns, but you still have to sign the document authorizing them to get your tax returns. But the signature for that is literally in the middle of the page. So it's so easy to miss if you're just flipping through it. Same thing with the, I don't know if any of you have seen the 3-day rescission notices. So anytime you're financing something, you have a 3-day right to change your mind after you sign. And the lender, in that case, part of the loan package will be, there's sometimes 2, sometimes 3 copies of the same document. It's called the notice of right to rescission or notice of right to cancel. And It's a really confusing document, and I might be stepping ahead because I know you wanted to talk about a couple confusing documents,
You're
but
fine.
it's really confusing because there's two signature boxes on it. And the first one says, yes, I wish to cancel. And it's a huge box and it's circled in like, a bolded square. And then the signature line under it is, I understand I have the right to cancel and have received this notice. That's the one they need to sign. But the first signature looks way more predominant. So people automatically just go to sign that. And you're like, no, like slow-mo, action movie kind of style. So yeah, it definitely takes longer when I don't do the stickies because I have to sort of be on the lookout for those things. Whereas if I stickied it ahead of time, no sweat.
Yeah, I hear you on that one. So
Every
important.
time they want to sign that box, every single time.
You have to like hold on to it and be like, no, don't sign this one.
I do. I usually flip the document over and put my hand on it because as soon as you put a document in front of them, they're ready with the pen, right? So usually I flip the document and I'm like, hold on, this one's confusing. Don't sign here before I even explain to them what it is.
That's good stuff. But so what I want you guys to take away as far as the group goes, have a plan, have a preparation method, right? There's nothing wrong with the system. It's highly encouraged. Everybody's system can look different, right? There's no
Absolutely.
right or wrong. There's just what works, right? And if it works, it works, and it's the right answer. Whether you are a brand new notary, a seasoned notary, or a seasoned notary, signing agent, and lawyer and title lawyer, right? You still need that system, and it still helps, and it's still, so there. Don't detract from that, right? Don't just wild west it and go out guns blazing. Okay, have a plan. I think it is underrated how much information you will get if you just read some of the documents, right? So your first signing you ever get, or even a mock set of documents, right, that have John Q. Public or whatever. Read the verbiage in there, and you'll learn a lot, and you'll see where some signatures have to go and initials and all that. And the more you do that, the easier the process will become.
Absolutely. And just something else I wanted to mention is even though there's 100 different lenders out there, all of their loan packages are kind of the same. They really sort of contain same documents just in their own format. So once you've done 4 or 5 of them, you'll know exactly what you're looking at. As soon as you look at the page, you're like, oh, this is this form. This is the reason for that. And it won't take you, it'll take you 5 minutes to flip through the package and sticky it instead of an hour. Because as soon as you see the documents, you're like, oh, this is familiar. I know what this is.
Right, 1,000%. And those sticky note pieces help, because if you're having a long day of signing after signing after signing, or even if you're just doing one signing and it's at the end of the day or the middle of the day, or something happens before then that throws your mind off whack, right? Something personal or something at work, whatever the case may be, those stickies will keep your mind back on track. It's kind of like a safety net as well, in case your mind is just completely done with the day. Yes, do
Absolutely.
it. Do something like that. So I'm going to switch tracks over a little bit more, since we are at about an hour, and go into the Florida stuff a little bit more specifically. Just to help out our Florida folks. So can you give us a generalization on what a notary public does in Florida, or in general, right? It's going to be everywhere, but what the requirements might be. Is there anything out of the ordinary is what I want to try to see if I can catch for those individuals in Florida that may not be a notary just yet. I know some of them are, but
so Florida is one of the states that does require you to take a course. I think it's like a 3-hour course, but I'm sure Josh can correct me if I'm wrong. You have to take the course, do the application. The course is pretty straightforward. You just gotta do it. And you have to be at least 18. You have to be a legal resident of Florida. And Florida does not allow notaries to have a felony conviction on their record unless you've had your rights restored. So if you've had it expunged or had your rights restored, that's not a problem, and they'll allow you. However, they will suspend your license if you're convicted of any crimes of moral turpitude, which is a weird leftover phrase from the 1800s that no one uses anymore. But it basically means if you've committed any crimes that are like morally horrific, like that have grave moral consequences, like embezzlement and fraud and things like that, because they want to make sure you're not just going to take people's money and run away with it. So Those are really the only issues in terms of what you need to become a notary. After you do the courts, you do have to pay a surety bond. I think they require $7,500 in Florida. But most of the notary companies that provide the courses, they also will provide that stuff for you. So I use Budget Notary, I think is who I'm with. Check my stamp. I just dropped it. I'm pretty sure it's Budget Notary. And they made the process really simple for me. So that was easy. And you do have to renew it, I think every 4 years. Is that right, Josh?
I
so.
want to say yes for Florida. Mm-hmm.
I think so too. And what else did you ask? I forget what the rest of the question was.
No, I think that was it. I think the key piece, the key takeaway piece was the 3-hour course, because most states don't require that. A lot of states require a course, right? But the majority of the states don't require any courses. We just kind of go out there and just start stamping things. It's crazy.
Oh, and Yesenia just said it is the $7,500 and $25K for the remote online. I didn't know that was the surety bond for that. That's good to know.
Yeah.
One other weird thing about Florida, not weird, but Florida does not require you to keep a journal of your notarizations. It's still a best practice. And for people who are sort of like a casual notary who are maybe doing, a few of them a month, that's one thing. But realistically, there is no way I could document everything I notarize. Like just one closing alone would be, I don't know, 7 to 12, entries, and that's just not happening. So I do not keep a journal, but I also have all of my documents, saved so that I can go back to them if I needed to track it for any purpose.
Right.
But if you're not, if you're just sort of doing it for friends and family kind of deal, keep a journal just to keep you organized.
Amen. And for I'm not sure if the group knows surety bond versus E&O. So a surety bond protects the public, right, against any of your malpractice or stuff that you do wrong, right? And E&O insurance, errors and omissions, protects you as the notary. All right, so just make sure that you keep those two separate and in consideration. The surety bonds are typically legally required in most states. I want to say in every state, but there might be one that isn't. And the E&O insurance is not usually required by any state, but is definitely something that you want because, again, it's insurance for you as the notary in case you do something wrong during your notarial actions.
Do you want to hear a horror story about why you should still have E&O insurance even if you're just a signing agent?
Yes, please.
Or a title agent? So before I started my firm, I did attorney malpractice defense. That was my specialty. And one of my biggest cases was a title case where the title, she was an attorney, but it was just a title company. She just happened to be an attorney. Her email got hacked and spoofed, and it was what's called a boyfriend scam. Have you guys heard of any of this? Okay, I'll tell you about it in a second. So her email got hacked like 3 days before closing. This person hacked into her email, sent an email to the buyer posing as her assistant, like used her assistant's signature block and everything, and said, hey, we changed our trust account. Please wire the purchase funds to this new account. And even though she had, warnings in her signature block that said, we will only give you trust account information, physically in person or, at the time of signing or whatever, the buyer wired $400,000 directly to the scammer's trust account. When my friend client found out, the buyer called and said, hey, did you get my wire 2 days ago? And she said, why did you wire me any money? I never sent you your final figures and I never asked you to wire anything. And she said, oh, I got an email from your assistant. So she went through her system and sure enough, there was a sent email that had come from the hacker. So she immediately got the FBI involved, but since, a couple of days had passed, she was only able to recover, I think, 14,000 of it.
Wow.
And so the buyer sued her for the rest, the 386,000 or whatever it was that they weren't able to recover. And thankfully she had E&O coverage and specifically had the cyber crime rider. That does not always come with E&O policies. You can add it on. You want to add it on because that was the only thing that really saved her. Otherwise, she would have been hit with a judgment for $386,000 because she was not, properly monitoring and didn't have, the right cybersecurity guards set up. And the FBI even told her, this happens all the time. The hackers are learning how to get around your security. So it's one of those things that always makes me nervous and makes me determined to ensure that everybody that I know has cybercrime E&O policy because that would have been a total nightmare had that not existed. So,
well, shoot, thank you for that story. You know, it's nuts. So in a lot of the Facebook forums, right, you'll hear people give advice, and you should do this, you should do that, you should do this, you should do that, and I call them barracks lawyers, right? Because I'm in the military, and it's just people who just heard something and they just parrot it, without ever
Yep.
knowing where the source came from or checking it out themselves. And so a lot of even the NNA will recommend that you as a notary delete the files when you're done and that kind of stuff. And I'm not a fan of that. I kind of go against the grain on that because that's my proof of what I sent out, right? So I have my journal. I keep an external hard drive encrypted, right, with a digital archive of all the files that I've sent to anybody, right, and their IDs. It's not part of my journal, but it's something that I keep as an archive for historical record, right? I use a VPN. That way I just have that extra little protection. And what I try to tell people is that if you think about it, they want you to delete it, right? Well, where does your deleted file go? To your trash bin. Your trash bin is encrypted, right?
Nothing's ever gone forever.
Yeah, your hard drive on your computer, at some point you're gonna get a new computer, and those files are gonna still be there to a degree, right? If you email, right, documents back and forth and you're not encrypting it, then that's exposure. There's a lot of ways that there's a lot of cyber exposures that people don't think about. So I'm glad you told that story. That's scary. That's very scary because
Yeah.
you don't ever think it's going to happen to you, but
Yeah. So now a lot of title underwriters will request that you do not give the last 4 digits of your trust account in writing, in email, any other way other than having them physically call your office and ask for it. So that's what I started doing. So when lenders and underwriters ask for your wire instructions, even the buyer, they want to send that earnest money deposit, they need your wire instructions. I just give them the first half and then say call my office for the last 4 digits because I'm not risking it.
that's valid, valid concern. Good point. And again, thank you so much for that story. And it means so much more coming from someone with your experience. So that's God bless. That's awesome.
I don't like to scare people, but it's real.
No, everybody's already looking up their E&O Insurance, trying to find out if they have cyber or add it to. So let's talk about witnesses, right? What about them?
They're the bane of my existence. No, I'm kidding. So it depends what you're signing, but generally speaking, in Florida, witnesses cannot be interested parties. So if you're having a deed signed, the witnesses cannot be the people who are buying the property. They have to be uninterested witnesses. You can be a witness. The notary can be a witness. The only thing that I would suggest not witnessing is, for instance, if you're notarizing signatures to a will, a lot of times you're also witnessing the witness's signatures. So you can't witness your own signature. So that's really the only exception to that, but you can definitely witness a deed. The witnesses need to be over 18, disinterested parties, and you cannot, I'm sure that you already know this, but you cannot notarize for immediate family. So like your spouse, your mother, your father, your sister, your child, you cannot notarize their documents. They could still be witnesses, but you can't notarize their signature. So like if your aunt is buying a property, technically you could notarize her signature because she's not the grantor. She's buying the property. She's not signing the deed. And I think aunts would probably be allowed in Florida. Do you guys know? I think they're not considered immediate family. I think it's just brother, sister, mother, father, right, child, spouse. Yeah. So either way, that would be okay. But yeah, witnesses, that's sort of something that my mobile notaries have run into is they show up to have, the seller sign the deed or whatever, and there's no witnesses there. So I always try to make sure, the sellers know you need to have, your neighbors or whatever come over to witness the documents, but sometimes they don't listen. So there's always, a possibility that you'll show up and you won't have the witnesses you need. Okay, well then, maybe let's take this to Starbucks and see if we can get the barista to be a witness. I have a brewery downstairs at my office and people show up all the time to sign documents and don't have the witnesses that they were supposed to bring. So I'm like, guess we're having a beer. And then we go down to the brewery. The bartenders are like, oh, hey, Nicole, you need me to witness something? They know the deal, and it works. But yeah, people never have witnesses when you need them to. So just, you got to be flexible and willing to sort of roll with the punches and find witnesses where you can.
Exactly. And to that point, signing agents, notaries, if you have the ability to go through the packet early, right, always check the deed. and see if there's going to be any witnesses required. Over time, you'll get used to, depending on who the lender, who's hiring you for it, / where they're from, what state they're from, will dictate whether they're going to be requiring witnesses or not. So that way, when you call the signers to prep them, right, you can let them know, hey, you're going to need a witness, right? I'll be one, but you also need another one, and they have to be 18 years older. They have to have an ID, because as a notary, you still have to verify that ID of the witness, right?
Absolutely.
So it's something to keep in mind for that. And Mrs. Senya says, can the witness for a deed be an immediate relative of one of the people that do have a written interest in it? Like, for example, say their child over 18? No. If I'm signing a document, and I'm an interested party in that document, my son, daughter, spouse cannot sign any of that. I would say it would be a stretch for like my siblings to sign for it. I think that would be a case by case kind of thing that I would just steer away from as a notary. But yeah. Let's see.
And that's another thing I should mention is in Florida, all deeds require 2 witnesses for each signature. So if a husband and wife are selling their property, the husband's signature needs 2 witnesses and the wife's signature needs 2 witnesses. They can be the same witnesses. Nobody cares. They just have to have 2 witnesses for each signature. And then in terms of the loan packages, mortgages legally do not actually need to be witnessed. They just need to be notarized. Most lenders will require witnesses anyway. Some will require 1 witness, some will require 2. This totally depends on the lender. Even though, like I said, even though witnesses are not a legal requirement for mortgages, most lenders will put them on there anyway. So that's one other reason to flip through the loan package when you get it, is to see, how many witnesses does this lender require on their mortgage?
Perfect.
So you know ahead of time.
Perfect. And thank you, Mr. Mike, for coming in. See, and this is the kind of things that I love about this group, right? And that we always preach is you have to find the source, right? So good old Mr. Martin here put in the section for Florida, says stipulates that a Florida notary public may not notarize a document if the person whose signature is to be notarized is the spouse, son, daughter, mother, or father of the notary public. Oh, that's specific to the notary public. Yeah, don't do that either. Your family and their family are off limits.
Exactly.
Just FYI for everybody. All right, that's good stuff. Good stuff. So that solves the witnesses piece. What else did I have for you? We talked about the surety bond. We talked about E&O insurance. The signing agent course. Which one did you take?
The one I took was through Budget Notary, but okay. I don't remember if it had like a separate name or whatever.
Oh, okay.
It was a while ago.
All right, no problem. Let's see. And then for those that are not notaries yet, if you're going to be a notary in Florida, right, you are limited to the state of Florida. Don't go and notarize somewhere in like Georgia or something. Fees. Does the state of Florida set fees for notarial acts?
They do, and I believe that it is $10 for all. The max you can charge is $10 per document. There may be some exceptions to that though, so don't quote me on it. I'm pretty sure that's sort of the standard rule, is you can charge a max of $10 per document. 25 for RON. Yesenia, you are on top of it.
Right? Someone's going to get hired. No.
Yeah, and a wedding is more because you're actually performing the ceremony itself or whatever. You're not just signing the document. But for like standard like deeds, mortgages, affidavits, jurat pages, anything along those lines, the max is $10 a document.
And is it a document or notarization?
Notarization. Sorry.
Notarization.
Good clarification.
Yeah. Okay. So then perspective from a lawyer, right? Now we understand that we're not giving any kind of legal advice and all that kind of good stuff. But what I've always done and what I always recommend without myself being a lawyer is when I was in Texas, they capped, right, each notarization fee just like in Florida. So if I was capped at $10 for the notarization, the definition that the state gives for notarization, right, is you actually applying a notarial signature and all that kind of good stuff, right? So in my mind, I can only charge $10 or up to $10 for that. But I can charge you a travel fee. I can charge you an administrative fee. I can charge you a whatever fee to equal out whatever. And as long as I give you forewarning and you agree to it, I'm good. What's your take?
That's exactly right. And that's why I'm not even 100% sure, what documents fall under that $10 charge, because that's not how any of the notaries that I use charge. They all just charge a flat rate of, like I said, between 100 and 150 for, per client or whatever, which is basically a flat rate that includes their travel fee, their admin fee. They don't parcel it out like that generally.
That's a good call. And so just, to throw it out for everybody, if you're planning on hitting up a title company, right, or whatever, it's best to just set on a fee. Don't worry about how much I'm going to charge this much per mile and blah blah blah. No, title companies don't care, right? They have to disclose everything to the signers, right, ahead of time. So that fee needs to be set. There is no, there's not a lot of wiggle room for, okay, Notary 1 charges $12 a mile, Notary 2 charges 50 cents. Well, let me do the calculations. And
yeah, I'm not doing that. And
No.
I'm not waiting until the night before closing to see how many documents and how many notarizations are needed to calculate it either. So just flat rate me.
Exactly. Flat rate is always the best. And if you're going to a title company for the first time and you don't know what to charge, that's okay. Ask them what they charged or what they typically pay, and then you can negotiate from there. If you're new, I mean, you may not want to negotiate. Just take what you got. If you're
Right.
seasoned and all that, and that's a little too low, then you negotiate and you talk to them and you figure that piece out. But I wanted to throw that out there for you guys. Is I see a lot on other forums that, charge this and charge that, and per mile, blah blah blah. It doesn't matter. If you're working with Miss Nicole and you had that relationship for a while, etc., and she all of a sudden has a signing for you to do that's 2 hours away, right? As a good business practice, right? If she's been feeding you all this food this whole time, it would be a good gesture to just keep the same fee, go out there. She might comp you some more, right? That's a little over exaggeration, a 2 hour thing. But my point is that whether it was an hour away or a block away, that fee needs to remain consistent between you and the title company. That way there's predictability and all that kind of good stuff.
Absolutely. And that sort of also carries over into my fee with the clients. I need these realtors to keep sending me their deals. So if they send me, a transaction that's a little farther than I would normally do it, I'm not really going to charge them more for that. I just know that I will probably have to pay my notary a little bit more or find someone closer to where that transaction is happening. And any cost, any extra cost to me is just something I'm going to eat. And Yesenia just put a question in about print fees. How do you feel about a print fee if the job gets canceled after the docs have already been printed? Wondering if that's common. I've actually never had that happen, knock on wood. Usually if it's going to cancel, it cancels at least a few days before closing. It's more common for it to just get pushed back by a few days. So typically, I would suggest not printing the documents until, the night before or the day of closing, just to avoid any of that happening. But similar to that, if something falls through at the last minute, I also have fees that I've incurred. I might have already scheduled and booked a survey and I paid for that out of closing. So now that invoice is coming to me. The title search, the lien search, all of those things are things that I've either paid out of pocket for, or I will be invoiced and expected to pay at closing. And some of those vendors, if things fall through, like my lien search company, if it falls through, they give me, I think, 3 gimmies a year that I can cancel and they don't charge me for. But if it's beyond that, yeah. So sometimes if it's not, somebody that I've worked with before, I will have the parties, the buyer and seller, acknowledge with me that if this falls through, they're still on the hook for these costs that I've incurred on their behalf. Collecting them is a different story though, because once it falls through, they're not answering my emails and my phone calls. So yeah, sometimes I have to eat costs. So sometimes it's a cost of doing business. That said, if it is someone that I've worked with before, or if they're a particularly good client and I know that I'm going to be able to get them to, pay me so that I can recoup my costs on those, then yes, I would entertain, a doc print fee, not anything excessive, but, $10 or something. Because yeah, ink is not cheap and paper is not cheap. And those loan packages can be, 150 pages. So by the time you're done, it adds up. So yeah, that's something I would entertain, but it would sort of be on a case by case basis, if that makes sense.
That's a good question. That's a good answer.
Yeah.
I got a story for you on this one.
Ooh.
So, um, I used to work direct with title back in Texas, right? And so I would go there. They would print the documents for me. Like I didn't have to worry about any of that kind of stuff. I come to Kentucky, and because my time is a little bit more unpredictable, I go through signing services. That way, if it's convenient for me, it's convenient for them. It works, and if not, then I just pass it on, and they'll find another notary, right? So my relationships aren't necessarily relationships right now, right? I don't have a relationship with a title company that's local. I don't have a relationship with a specific signing service per se, but recently here in Kentucky, I went and did a signing. I printed the documents, confirmed everything, etc. Went out to the guy's house, knocked on the door. The dude answers, and he says, "Oh, surprised to see me." I introduced myself, and he says, "Yeah, I canceled that 4 hours ago." I said, "What?" And he says, "Yeah, I spoke to so and so and canceled it." I said, "Okay, well, thank you, sir." Blah blah blah. Got in my car, logged on to SnapDocs and sent a little comment and all that kind of good stuff, and bounced out. Long story short, they still got to pay me for that, right? Because nobody notified me. I called the guy directly, the lender who was my point of contact, and he said, "Oh shoot, it must have been somebody else who received it. I didn't receive it, blah blah blah." So whatever the case may be, but I printed the documents already. I traveled, so that fee is still owed to me. 30 days pass, 60 days pass, 90 days pass. Sent emails, all that kind of good stuff, just as good faith. Once that 90-day mark hits, now I have Legal Shield. So I go through Legal Shield to do a payment demand letter and that kind of stuff. And sure as shit, as soon as they receive that sucker, I got payment right away.
Always.
Sometimes it just takes a lawyer to get in there and and really scare somebody.
Oh
But,
yeah. That letterhead carries weight.
Yeah. But if it was a client, or if it was a title company that I worked directly with, and or a signing service that I knew on a closer level, I would have eaten the costs 1,000%. Like, hey, it happens. It doesn't happen often, right? But I'm not scared of not getting business from that signing company again. So to me, it was perfectly fine and worth pursuing.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that's good stuff. Oh wow, we have a lot in the chat. I didn't catch up with that, so.
I've been kind of keeping an eye on it, but it's hard.
All right, so we're at about an hour and 30. All right, so in the interest of keeping with the time and making sure we have enough time for the Q&A and to go over the documents, I'd like to move to the document piece, and that way we can go into the Q&A right after that. And for the Q&A portion, I am going to ask you guys to, we'll call you out by name. Just, I don't see the little hand thing. I'm not that good with Zoom. So what we'll do is through the chat, if you have a question, just say I have a question there, and then we'll just call you by name, and then you can unmute at that point. But let me share my screen to get these documents up here. Oh, I'm lying. Can't do it. Why can I not do it?
Oh, and Yesenia, just to clarify, because I just saw your comment. Yes, I think that's probably exactly why. Because they're my clients, I email them their private info all the time, but I'm double encrypted and all that jazz. I would never expect the signing agent or a mobile notary to email them the documents. I just mean that's how I distribute them, so I don't have to have a separate copy ready for them to go. But that's interesting that was in your training.
All right, here we go. Let me share this sucker real quick. This might look a little off, but hopefully, where'd it go? No, I have to stop sharing because I can't find it. Sorry, guys.
While you're doing that, I'll put my email in the chat. So if anybody wants to email me to ask me questions or set up a coffee date or something, I am happy to do so.
So nice.
Don't tell anybody I have a reputation to uphold. I'm a very scary person.
There it is. I don't know why it wasn't showing up earlier. Boom. All right. Let me know when you're done, Miss Nicole, and I'll move on forward.
Done.
Oh, okay. Then I'm moving forward then. Can you see this document okay? Is that all right?
Is there any way you can make it bigger? I can see it, but I gotta kind of squint.
Yeah, let's see if I can do this. Hold on, let's see. What does this button do? Boom. Is that too big?
I mean, I don't care. Yeah, that's perfect.
That's good. All right. So we have the U.S. Patriot Act information form on here. All right. So I'm going to kind of give my spiel, and then I have a question for you, Nicole, on how you would answer this, because there's to me it's pretty simple, but I've seen a lot of crazy answers on other Facebook forums, so I just want to kind of throw it out there. All right, so the Patriot Act form, right? When you read this, all right, you'll see a part where it says forms of identification, right? It'll say either one or two, right? One form of identification, two forms of identification. You're verifying a few things. One, you're verifying the borrower's name, you're verifying the date of birth, their social, and the residential address, right? And you're using some sort of source for that. The source has to be something that's verifiable and legit. So the forms of identification, right? You have a first document list and you have a second document list. So if it only asks for one, it doesn't matter which one it's from, but it's preferred that it's from the top one or from the first document list. If you have two documents that are required, right, then you need one from the first and then one from the second, kind of thing. I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty sure that you can have two from the first and that'll be just fine. But I'll let Miss, it's fine, right? Okay. Comment section, I've never used it, but I'm sure there's a reason for it. And then the signature piece, right? That's my signature, my printed name, and then my title and date. Now for the title, and this is one opinion I do want from you, Nicole, for that title piece, there's controversy over whether it's signing agent, closing agent, or notary. My opinion is there's nothing wrong with putting notary, and there's nothing wrong with putting signing agent. What is your opinion?
I always put settlement agent.
Well,
Because
you do.
right, because that's I'm handling the money, I'm settling the file.
Mhm.
That said, if I were just doing it in a notarial capacity or for my mobile notaries that I sometimes use,
Right.
they almost always put notary public, but I'm totally fine with signing agent as well, just not closing agent. That's one thing that I see sometimes, and you're not doing the closing, I'm doing the closing.
Right.
So it's sort of kind of confusing because you're the one having the client sign all the documents, and most people think that is the closing. That's not the closing. The closing is actually when I swap the money, change the deed for the money, if that makes sense. Keys for cash. So that is when it's actually closing, not when you're physically signing. But yeah, so notary is fine, signing agent is fine. Just don't do settlement or closing agent unless you're actually doing the closing.
Perfect. God bless America. All right. I love that answer. That's excellent. It's exactly what I was looking for. And for those of you who may have heard otherwise or have heard that putting notary on there is wrong because you're not notarizing, that's a fallacy. All right. Your title is notary. You're a notary. That's what you are. You're a notary public.
Yep.
So signing agent would be the additional stretch, but notary public, if there were to be one right answer, I would say it would be notary public. Okay.
I would agree with that for sure. And I have used the comment section one time. Do you guys want to hear this crazy story?
Yeah, hit us with it.
One of my very first closings. So now most lenders have changed it where they want signature to match what they print. But back in the day, 3 years ago, some lenders still wanted them to sign it exactly as it is on their ID. And I had a buyer. He was like 22 years old, buying his first house, awesome kid, right? Except he pulls out his ID so that I can verify it, make a copy. And it was still his driver's license that he got when he was 16. And because he was a 16-year-old punk, his signature, he drew a cat face, like a little ears, whiskers, just a cat face. So I'm like, oh my God. So I immediately call the lender and I'm like, this is his signature. What do you do? And they're like, well, he's got to draw the cat face. So we literally, longest closing of my life, because he had to sign every single signature line with the damn cat face. And he was like, I am such an idiot. I never foresaw having to do this. I'm going directly to the DMV after this. But so when I did the Patriot Act form in the comments, I made sure to clarify the signature per his driver's license was a cat face. That's why this is his signature. And I actually included a copy of the driver's license to the lender so they knew I wasn't full of it. But he was mortified. I thought it was hilarious, but it took forever. And by the end, he was like rubbing his hands, hand cramps from drawing this cat face 100 times. He was mortified, but it was really entertaining for me. But that's the only time I've used the comment section, was like, where else do I explain this? You know?
That is so awesome.
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine being the lender that got that and was like, wait a second, what?
Well, when I called, because I called them because I'm like, what do you want me to do? And the guy was like, please hold. I got to talk to my supervisor. So it like went up the chain of command. And it was probably like 20 minutes before they finally were like, he's got to draw the cat face.
That's the solution. I hope I don't have to use the comments, but when I do, I hope it's something like that.
That's exactly why I put that in the comments and sent a copy of it. Because I was like, they're going to think I'm like pulling a prank on them. Like they're going to see this package and be like, what the hell is this? So let me explain it.
Someone's going to report me to the Secretary of State. All right, so our last form that we're going to go over for this one is the closing disclosure. So my question is, if I can move this out the way, boop, there we go. Let me minimize this a little bit more. All right, so there are multiple schools of thought, and everybody does it their own way, their presentation style, etc. Right? So on one hand, you can use this at the very beginning of your signing and really, dig in deep enough to where you instill that confidence and that command-little presence. So when you go through the rest of the signings or the rest of the documents, the signers just kind of, follow suit. Some people go way into detail and some people don't go into any detail. I'm curious to know if you were wearing a signing agent hat, not necessarily the lawyer hat, how would you present this document?
I almost always start with this document because this is the money. And that's really what everybody cares about at the end of the day. What am I paying? What is this costing me? What if you're the seller, what am I getting? So everybody wants to hear about the money. So I always start with this document. I also use an ALTA. Are you guys familiar with an ALTA? Josh, you know what that is?
Yeah.
It's a similar form to the closing disclosure. The closing disclosure is what is required by the lenders. ALTAs are used whenever it's a cash deal or, there's a few other circumstances. I always also use an ALTA, even when there's a lender involved, because the ALTA is the same info as the closing disclosure, but it's much more clear and straightforward and easy to follow. But this is the document that is legally required by the financial institutions. So anytime there's a lender, this is sort of the king, if that makes sense. And it can be a little confusing. Can you make it just a little bit bigger? Sorry, I just don't want to put my face like on my computer.
You're good.
You guys don't need that up close and personal view. So do you want me to just kind of go through the document?
Well, what would you, yeah, let's do that. Do it like you would explain to a signer. Can you do that for me?
Yeah, perfect. Right. So I would start out by explaining that this is a document that's prepared by the lender. They've actually already seen this because the lender is required to get this to them at least 72 hours before closing. Do lenders always do that? Absolutely not. Are they required by law to? Yes. So I just stay out of it. I just let the lender do what they're going to do, and as long as they're okay with my closing date, I move forward because I'm not there to supervise them.
Amen.
So this is the document that basically lays out all of the financial ins and outs. So the information at the top is really just the basic closing date, who's doing it, what's the property address, who's the borrower, who's the lender, and the basic terms of the loan. So, you just want them to quickly review that, make sure it's correct. Like, yes, this is a refinance, it's a fixed rate, it's 30 years, it's a VA loan, all of that is correct. Yes, move on. So the loan amount is, what it is, the interest rate, make sure that's correct. That brings your monthly principal and interest to $549.19. If you scroll further down, there are some things that need to be escrowed. All lenders require you to keep certain funds in escrow, things like homeowners insurance and property taxes. This is the amount that they're requiring you to keep in escrow each month. So that brings your total, there's usually another line here. Oh, above it. That brings your total monthly payment to $752.20. Mm-hmm. Make sure that they're like, okay with that. Then you scroll down a little bit. So the closing costs and the cash to close, that's all detailed on the next page. So we'll come back to how we got there. But this is the total closing costs. And then I go through the second page very briefly and to sort of give them a minute to look over it. So I usually tell them this first paragraph, section A, is your lender fees. So this is their origination fees. If they have any, a lot of times they'll charge points and things like that. That's where all of that goes. So that's all of the fees that are being charged by your lender in conjunction with the loan. This section B is really going to be all of your title costs. So the title search, a lien search, my closing fees. Oh my gosh, there's a lot of stuff on there. I do charge a courier fee as well. And the settlement fee for each side. I just kind of go through that briefly with them. If they order a survey, that's where that kind of thing will be as well. I like to put and this just depends on the title company or the title attorney, what you put in B versus C. So technically B is supposed to be what they did not shop for. So things that were kind of done for them, like credit reports, appraisals, things like that, that the lender sort of gets the ball rolling. And C is things that they did shop for. So in most counties in Florida, the seller is responsible for hiring the title company. So the buyer didn't pick me. So that's why in most cases, all the title stuff will be in B because they didn't shop for me. The seller told them they were using me. But for some things like the survey, I usually give them quotes and they tell me which company they want to go with. So technically the survey would belong in C, if that makes sense.
Gotcha.
But nobody really cares what's in B and what's in C because they all go into the same pot. It's just sort of for clarity. So then you scroll down a little bit to the other costs. You have the taxes and recording fees. Those are the fees charged by the government. When I record your deed and record your mortgages, you have to pay taxes and recording fees for those. That's where that comes from. The prepaids, those are those things that your lender requires you to pay up front. For instance, the prepaid interest, and that's usually the only thing. Sometimes lenders will want them to pay prepay insurance, but the lender tells you that. So you just kind of go with whatever the lender says. But for the section, for the prepaid interest, their first payment for their loan isn't going to be due for like roughly a month after closing, right? So the lender still wants to collect their interest for however many days there are between closing and when their first payment's due. So that's what that is. Then section G, those are those escrow requirements that the lender requires you to hold in escrow. And then I always point out the aggregate adjustment because there almost always is one, and that's money that the lender is giving them back. So they like, oh, hey, they're giving me $520 back. And then they smile about that and they're happy and we move on. The payoffs and payments, I do not ever discuss those with the buyer because they're none of the buyer's business. The seller usually has a mortgage that needs to be paid off. The buyer doesn't need to know how much that mortgage is. So while you may have a combined CD, the lender, what's in their loan package should be a buyer only CD. So the buyer gets the CD that has the payoff on it. You're going to have the seller sign a seller only CD that does not have the buyer's personal financial information. Seller doesn't need to know how much the buyer owes on their home, so they don't get that info. So that's kind of important, is the lender will sometimes only send you their CD that has all of that info. So you need to use your software or whatever, if you're a title agent, to draft a seller only one that doesn't have that. Just a note. And then so you go through your total payoffs and cash to close. I never really focus on this because this just confuses people. So when they initially apply for the loan, the lender has to give them a loan estimate. That's what that first column is. They have limits on how much that can change, how different the final totals can be from what they estimated. So they can't lock you in on a low quote and then increase it later and you're stuck with it. So they have to show what the original was versus what the final was and make sure that it was within the acceptable range. And that's why you get that aggregate credit, that aggregate adjustment that I just mentioned, because that's how they make sure they're within that range. Right. But people don't understand that, so I never even focus on that. I don't focus on any of the other pages really because it's sort of just a summary and boilerplate language that's included. So then I really just go to the end page and show them where to sign. And like I said, I usually use the ALTA form, which I wish that I had one that I could quickly send you guys, but I would have to redact it because the ALTA is much more like what you guys are used to seeing in terms of like credit and debit ledgers. So on the ALTA, there's seller, buyer, and it has like all of the pluses and minuses, and then at the bottom it has like how much you're paying and how much you're getting. So that's where I really focus on the finances, the actual figures, because it's just much more clear on there. But since this is a required document, you got to go over it. I'm gonna look at the chat real quick. I saw a couple messages come in, but I saw one of them said something about what do you do if what do you do when the signer tells you you don't have to go over this, my lender already sent it to me. I say that is fantastic, but it is my job for you to understand, to make sure that you understand what you're signing. So if you don't have any questions, that's totally fine. But if you do want me to go over it, I'm happy to do so. I can't make them listen to me. All I can do is let them know that it's my job to answer any questions they have and make sure they understand it, and I'm there for them if they need it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make them sit there and go through it line by line if they don't want to hear it.
When a signer asks or tells me that and they say, I already know all of it, just show me where to sign, my wish is your command, right? So in that case, I give them the document and I say, after you're done reviewing, I need you to sign right here and initial right there. And then they do their little piece, and I just rinse and repeat that all the way through, and then 15 minutes and you're out.
Exactly.
Don't threaten me with a good time. That's good. That's good. All right. Yeah. So those were the two documents I wanted to quickly cover. There's obviously a lot more documents, right, that go into it, but that's not the purpose of this this live video. So we'll go into that at some point in the future. But I was really curious as to how you would present it to a signer, being a notary and having the lawyer hat and all that kind of stuff in the background information. So I appreciate you taking the time for that. Thank you very much for showing us that.
Absolutely.
So now let's move into the Q&A session. I will start with Yesenia's question that she chatted in. But if you have a question after that one, please just put in, question, and I'll see your name and we'll just call you and you can unmute and whatnot. But for Yesenia's, it says, so if we see that included in the packet by mistake, should we let the lender know? And Yesenia,
so I actually just typed a response into that, but I'm
perfect.
I'm happy to verbally answer it as well. So I think what you're talking about is when I talked about the CD and how you want to make sure that the seller does not sign the full CD. The loan package coming from the lender will have the full complete CD for the buyer to sign. That's totally fine. The buyer's signing that, it's their info, that's cool. They also usually want the lender to also sign, the seller to also sign the CD. Just do not have the seller sign that same CD. That's when you need to make sure that whoever hired you, the title company, whatever, gives you, if you're having seller documents signed, that they give you a separate seller only CD. And that doesn't have that specific information on it. But whatever comes from the lender is totally cool for the buyer to sign, because that's their biz.
Amen. Amen. So now is the time to ask any questions you want, whether it was something that we covered, didn't cover, etc. So feel free to put that into the chat box as far as, you have a question. And again, we'll ask you to unmute and come on board. Yeah, and for those seller buyer packages, right? Sometimes they come twice, as Nicole was saying. Sometimes they come just the buyer side only, just the seller side only. So the good thing is the CD will always tell you at the very end who's signing it, and at the very beginning who it's for. So that works out really well. What's always been confusing to me, and it's cleared up over the years, but I still hate going over it, is that ALTA settlement statement.
Love the ALTA. That's my favorite document.
I would
that's
choose
not true.
the CD over the ALTA any day of the week and twice on Sunday. Yeah.
You need therapy, my friend.
Well, I'm bald, so that's my excuse for everything.
My favorite document is so in every lender package, there's a document, something called notice of furnishing negative information.
Right.
And it just sounds so awful. It's like you're authorizing them to talk trash about you, but really it's just authorizing them to get your credit info.
Yeah.
Which you've already done when you applied for the loan, but it's just one of those documents they want the wedding signature on. And I'm always like, this is ridiculous, because they're going to report positive information too. Like, they're going to report that your payments are on time every month.
Right.
So
but the negative should scare you. So Miss Denise, she says, when I am preparing for a closing, am I allowed to complete my journal with the title of the documents that need to be notarized beforehand? I have my thoughts on this. Would you like me to go first, or would you like to go for that one, Nicole?
Whatever you want.
Okay.
Let's hear your thoughts. Give us your thoughts.
So I would say I like where your head's at, but I would advise against it. And the reason for that is because if it gets canceled last minute, now you have an unused journal entry in your journal, and you may have a lot of those at some point, right? And then if you start applying that to general notary work, same concept. You get no-showed, or the case may be. It's always good practice to fill out the journal while you're there at the signing. Now, if you're there at the signing and things are about to happen and whatnot, it's okay to kind of multitask that way if you want, but I wouldn't recommend doing it all preloaded. Just my opinion. Nicole?
I completely agree with that for the exact same reason, because especially with my memory, if it's in my journal and it falls through at the last minute and I don't immediately go in and cross it off or whatever, and a month goes by and I'd be like, I don't remember if I did that or not. I don't remember, so yeah, I would definitely say do it at closing or even like immediately after. So if you don't want to be multitasking and pulling out your journal while you're also trying to have these documents signed and explain what they're signing, just after you're done, when you're scanning the documents in or packaging them up to send them back to wherever, just go through and do your journal then.
Yeah, and some states actually make it law to do it right then and there, while others are more
Really?
lenient with it. Yeah, and I think that's what Yesenia is alluding to with the NNA training. So the NNA kind of advises that you do it there because it covers all bases. Whether you're kind of like having a journal, even though your state doesn't require it, right? It's just good
Yeah.
practice to have it. So if you do keep one, no matter what state you're commissioned in, you're good. As long as it's within the requirements of that
Yeah.
state. Same thing with the signing with filling it out at the table. Or at the time of the notarization. Some states specify that specifically, others don't. So it is a good practice to do it though like that. But pre-prepping in some states isn't illegal. It's just again not something I would advise.
Right. And, like Florida doesn't even require the journal. So I'm sure, they wouldn't care if you're prepping it ahead of time. It's just sort of a best practices issue and being able to verify your work later and not being able to, show why it's in your journal if you didn't do it. So
Right. Yeah, 1,000%. 1,000%. What is Shamika showing? Modern Journal of Notarial Events. Amazing journal. Awesome. They don't require in person, but for Ron, it's kept for 10 years. You guys type fast. Let's see. I just want to take a minute to thank you so much for this. It was very helpful, and you're friendly. Helpful nature is very encouraging. Oh, thanks, Jeremy.
Well, thanks.
Jeremy Isbell. All right. Thoughts on electronic journals? Mike, are you asking about for regular signing, like non-RON stuff, just normal wet ink notarial stuff, but keeping your journal electronically? Is that what you're asking? And yes, loan signings, etc. Yeah. So I haven't run into a state that requires you to do a traditional wet ink journal for traditional wet ink signatures or wet ink notarizations. I personally keep an electronic journal because it's easier and more convenient and it's customizable. So I customize it for what I do mostly in my state, and then I just kind of sign in, scan the back of the ID, do my little admin piece, and I move on. In Texas, I used to do the traditional one. It did take a lot longer, but it was good practice. I guess what I'm trying to say is neither of them are bad. Both have their ups and downs, but I personally would recommend that you start off with a traditional handwritten journal first, and then migrate over to an electronic one once you get the hang of what you actually need to keep a record of. Okay. Nicole, do you have any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I would just kind of agree with you. And like I said, I am not the person that should be talking about journals at all because I do not keep one. So do as Josh says, not as Nicole does.
Nice. I like it. And so you answered Yesenia's, right? The usually tell. Okay.
Yeah, and so I actually mean my answer actually applies to both ways I could read this question. So Yesenia asked, Nicole, would you say that usually title attorneys when hiring notaries for signing want scan backs? So I interpreted this as, do we want the whole package scanned back? Yes. Do we also want the back of the ID scanned? Yes. I always just do the front and backs just in case. It doesn't hurt and it takes you 2 seconds. Yeah, so my answer applies either way you intended that question. Yes, 100%. Scan.
A question on that. All right, so, and I just found this out, right? So my whole life has been a lie. So since 2018, when I was working at a title office had kind of taken me under their wing, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of part of why I try to pay it back. And so they took me under the wing, and I would just use their copier just to scan a copy and make a copy of the ID, right? So there was no zooming in, zooming out, just a standard regular size thing. So that's kind of how I always kept it. And then everybody I talked to would always keep the same thing. So then I start talking to more title company officers and escrow officers and asking them, hey, when you get the IDs back, right? Like, do you care what size it is? And they're like, no, we prefer that it's blown up, right? Like if you can make the whole page the ID, that'd be fine with us because it's easier for us to read. I said, no kidding. Is that something on that you've experienced or?
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily need a full page size, but even you don't have to blow it up. I can read it if it's small, but I definitely prefer to have it blown up just a little bit. And just another like little practice tip. The best piece of office equipment I have ever in my life bought is my ScanSnap scanner. It's if you just Google like ScanSnap, it comes up. They're like $400, but you literally can put a stack of documents in it, different sizes, doesn't matter. It'll scan it within like 30 seconds and save it right to your hard drive.
What?
Best thing in the world. I use it every single day and it has saved me so much time. And they're so small that you can take it with you.
What's
so
it
you
called?
can even take it to the closing with you, scan the documents in at the table, and you're done.
You say it's called the Snap what?
ScanSnap.
ScanSnap?
I'll put it in the chat. It's the Fujitsu ScanSnap. And every attorney and title agent I know swears by it. And I was one of those who was like, I have a copier that scans. I'm fine. No, this thing was life-changing.
They sell it at Walmart for $1,000. I'm not getting that one. I'll get
don't
the
buy that one. I think
one.
mine was like 400, and you can sometimes find like they do like lightning deals on Amazon for them a lot. So check that out. But yeah, like the standard one is like I think I have the IX 500 or something along those lines. It was like $400.
Nice.
But it's easily the best piece of equipment I've ever bought.
All right, we appreciate that. That's good stuff.
Yeah.
All right, which model? send them the referral affiliate link
that I have. Yeah, I think it's the IX 500, which is the IX 600 is on Amazon for $449 right now.
Ooh. Yeah, so Yesenia says, I have a professional scanner, which I believe is one Josh recommended, but definitely want to get one for my car, though this one can also be mobile. And I think you're talking about the Raven Compact. I did a review on that one on my YouTube channel, and it was a cool little scanner for the price. It was like $200 or something like that. 25 pages at a time. What I didn't like was that when it would feed out, it wouldn't keep the same order, so you had to really stay on top of it. But I wanted to upgrade to the next level, which was the Raven Classic, which runs about $400, and that one does a Wi-Fi, like no laptop required kind of thing, and that's what I really was interested in. You have a brother ADS.
I just threw a link to the one on Amazon for $449.
There you go.
I don't get anything from it, but I'm a big fan, so take a look.
There you go. It's not wrong if it works. All right.
Exactly. That's and it really has made scanning, because it immediately puts it into a PDF in your hard drive. You just copy it and tap it to whatever you want, move it to whatever file you want. It's awesome.
Amen. Amen. God bless America. All right. Are there any other questions anybody else has? We're coming up on 3 minutes to the hour. If there are no more questions, then we'll wrap it up. Call it a night. Going once, going twice. Oh, there they come. Looking for a notary in Tallahassee. Nice. I like it.
Never know. Definitely friend me or send me an email, because again, I network with other title agents and title attorneys all the time, and we are always looking for good notaries. There's also a few Facebook groups. There's one specifically for title agents and attorneys, but a lot of notaries get good business through there. It's called Title Talk is the name of the Facebook group. So just search for it, request to join. And I think it asks you what is your association with title work? You can just put in that you're, a mobile notary or whatever, and they'll let you in. But people are always posting on there like, hey, especially last minute when things fall through or the client can't come in for the signing. Hey, I need a notary in this area. Is anybody available? And you can get so much work through that. And I'll put the group name in here as well.
There you go.
And I think they have that group for different states too. So I think there's like a Title Talk Florida, a Title Talk Texas, whatever. So you just join the right one.
Right on, right on. All right. Well, I guess that wraps it up right there. So everybody's saying thank you, and yes, Nicole, thank you so much for your time, and
thank you.
I know that it's a precious amount, and I'm sure you charge decently well for the hour. So we do appreciate you taking the time to do this for us.
Well, I appreciate you having me, and I appreciate everybody for coming. It was nice not to talk to an empty room.
Right. All right. Well, we appreciate you. Do you want to hand out any kind of information as far as contact goes, or just, hey, find me on Facebook kind of thing?
I put my email address in the chat. I'm happy to do that again if anyone missed it. So I'll throw it in there real quick. You can also friend me on Facebook. It's just my name, which is on my thing right there. But I'm happy to chat with anybody who has any questions or anything like that. So give me a call.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us tonight, and we'll see you next time. Make sure that you give some kudos to Miss Nicole in the group. All right, don't just throw out her information out there like that, but at least comment on her and mention where she's from and all that, and talk about how awesome this piece was. To encourage more people to get this learning and education. But yeah, thank you guys so much for coming, and have a good night. I'll stay on for a little bit longer.